Now, NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio with Lee Witting. Whether you're listening on TalkZone, by podcast, through the archives of our ad-free shows on our YouTube channel, or connected through the content of our Facebook page. On today's show, we present part 2 of our fascinating interview with David Bennett, who, as a child, was exposed to Native American grandmother wisdom, experienced the impact of a teenage vision quest, and shared the piercing connection of up-close, direct eye contact with a whale, even before the revelations of his NDE from drowning in a violent storm. If you haven't heard part 1 already, I'd suggest you go to our YouTube channel for the June 3rd, 2024 show. Now, before I continue with the interview, I want to read to you from an article written by Cindy Griffith Bennett, David's wife, concerning the healing properties of a sacred Catholic relic, Padre Pio's glove. In November 2000, David was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and bone cancer that had collapsed his spine. Cindy's article, from which I've drawn some excerpts, is titled The Christmas Miracle. It appears in full in Dave Bennett's book, Voyage of Purpose. And from that article, I've taken these passages. Cindy wrote, "For some unknown reason, I just automatically picked up the phone." "Hi, Cindy," said an unidentified voice. As she kept talking, I recognized the English accent as Kate, a very sweet massage therapist who specializes in Thai massage. "Have you ever heard of Padre Pio?" she asked. I told her that I had visited Padre Pio's monastery when I made a trip to Italy. I knew that Padre Pio was born in the late 1800s and was one of the few 20th century people to have received the stigmata, the wounds that Christ had experienced on the cross. He lived until the 1960s. Padre Pio was known for his compassion and healing works. He also was known to bilocate, to be in 2 places at once. It is documented that during the Second World War, the Air Force was going to accidentally bomb an area that was occupied by Allies. The fighter pilots reported a monk appearing in the air in front of the plane, motioning to them to go back. They were so scared and shaken that they did go back, and the disaster was averted. Kate then asked me if I had heard about the healing miracles that happened around a glove of Padre Pio's. This I was unaware of. Kate offered to put another woman on the phone to tell me about it. The woman had a very sweet and calming voice. It turned out she was a local television personality known for her beauty inside and out. She started to tell me about Padre Pio's glove. It seemed that when the priest who was in custody of Padre Pio in Italy returned to his parish in Brooklyn, New York, he was given 2 of the gloves that Padre Pio had worn to keep the blood from the stigmata wounds from dripping on the floor. These gloves were considered a sacred object and were known to have healing properties. There were multiple stories of how the glove had healed the parishioners of this Brooklyn church. One thing that helps support this claim is the uncanny and beautiful rose scent that emanates from the glove. It grows stronger and weaker, yet is always present. Her son, who had written an article on the glove, had gotten on the waiting list, and so now, on Christmas, she had the glove for 2 whole days. Kate had told her about David's cancer, so she was calling to see if David would like to touch the miraculous glove, and she was willing to make the trip. We sat in our living room where she pulled out a wooden box with a little picture of Padre Pio on the top. She gently opened it, took out the picture, a little book, and then carefully brought out the sacred glove. At first, I was surprised. It was a little tiny brown glove with no fingers in it. It looked like a glove you would see on a homeless person. The funny thing to me was that it was so simple. You would think it would be ornate, or at least a little bigger. Padre Pio was a large man. I remembered seeing his slippers when I visited his monk's cell in Italy. They were so big. The little brown glove had a simple metal cross gently sewn onto the top side. Later, when I turned it over, I saw that someone had sewn a tiny piece of cloth with a little X in the place that must have been where the hand wound from the stigmata was. The amazing thing to us was the aroma that came from the glove. Anyone who smelled this rose scent could tell that it's like no other rose aroma you have ever inhaled. You couldn't recreate it, even with the best of oils or perfume. The piece of sheet from Padre Pio's bed also had that intense aroma. The sheet was in a little plastic bag, but the glove was naked except for the cross sewn to it. David put the glove in between his hands, and you could just feel the calm that came over him. This is how David explained it to me. And she quotes David here. At first, I sensed a type of love similar to what I feel when I reach out with my heart and touch the light I experienced in my near death. As I touched the glove, I was purposely feeling with my heart and not my mind. I could sense my heart opening up and feeling that light and love. I could feel both spiritual love and human emotion, and there were vast amounts of unconditional love. It's like going back into the light a little bit, not all the way. I've been having troubles keeping my heart open and working with my light and love because of the physical fatigue and drug-induced emotions associated with my treatment. The drugs have been blocking my ability to hear spirit. As I stroked the glove, it felt like some of the barriers were just melting away, and the light in my heart was able to open and shine as bright as ever. Well, I could just say that my spirit was singing. Spirit gets in this joyous frame of, and not mind, but spirit. When spirit is joyous, it feels like a song in my heart, interacting with my human emotions. It brings tears to the corners of my eyes. It gets me a little choked up. You can feel it emanate throughout your whole body. It isn't just your heart expanding, it physically expands throughout your entire body. There's the end of David's quote. As our new friend told David, the glove story and how she ended up with it, he sat and stroked the sacred glove as it lay in his right hand. Later, he told me he could actually feel the glove, which is its own little miracle, as he has permanent nerve damage in that hand and hasn't felt any sensation in it since his spine collapsed. She told me how Padre Pio was able to bring his compassion and insight into the confessional and would help people know what it is that they really wanted to release. Later, David told me, the funny thing was that it was almost like I was giving a little confession when I was talking to her about my near-death experience, cancer, and what life had been like. When she told us about Padre Pio giving confessions from his heart, I felt compelled to talk about the NDE and give a confession of it. Later, I didn't realize that until afterward. That night, when we went to bed, David told me that he could still smell the roses. I told him that I could not smell them, yet when I reached over and touched his hand, the minute I made contact, I could smell the roses too. I slept through the rest of the miracle, but here is how David explained it to me the next day. David told her, at 2:00, I awoke and the smell of roses was everywhere. I started to cry quietly so as not to wake you. I could feel my heart fully open and my light and spirit shining as bright as in my near death. So I got up, meditated, and just enjoyed taking that energy in. It has helped me since to keep my heart more open when I am feeling the physical and drug-related difficulties that are associated with the cancer therapies I am now on. That is also how the glove is continuing to help me now. And then Cindy concludes, months later, we learned a bigger miracle was on the horizon, revealed when the doctor looked at David's CAT scan. One reason I felt compelled to read Cindy's comments to you was a coincidence that reminds me again that there are no coincidences. Our show of May 6, 2024, just 1 month ago, was about a Marian apparition in Garabandal, Spain, when Mary and St. Michael appeared to 4 girls in the early 1960s. Padre Pio believed in the truth of these visitations of Mary, and when he was dying in 1968, he witnessed for himself a preview of a miracle that is predicted to happen in Garabandal soon. Padre Pio told his aide to send one of his gloves to Conchita, one of the children who visited with Mary. And when Conchita moved to New York years later, she may have donated that glove to the New York church. I heard the story of Padre Pio's healing glove for the first time in May, and now in June, we get a story of the glove helping to heal a guest on the show. Wow. Now, here's the conclusion of our interview with David Bennett. You write, early one morning in February of 1991, as I was waking and getting ready for work, I felt an overpowering call to return to the light. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, that was not too many people ask me about this, but yeah, I was waking and suddenly I was called back to the light, by my soul family. This was during the first Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
And a member of our soul family was one of the oil field workers, and his oil field was the wells were under fire, and he was trying to just secure the grounds around this one oil well when it exploded and it killed him instantly. And I was called back into the light to help him, to be there when he transitioned back into his light body and back into the light. The experience, incredibly personal, but it was something that I felt had to be told, because we have this connection with the light. And when we allow ourselves to be a part of our soul families, a part of our light fragments, we can be here and there, and we can be there for our fellow man. Like, this was a person that was a part of my soul family that was living, that I didn't know personally, but he died on the other side of the world from me, and he was transitioning into the light. And so I was called back to be there and be present for him as he transitioned back to the light. It it took me a couple days to get over that, because the love. I mean, when we're in that light, we feel, because we're out of our body, so our emotional state stays with our body. So we're able to feel that love, that immense love. But when you come back to your body, some of that love, that unconditional love, is really present with you. And it's emotional. It's hard when we get back into our physical body, then the emotions get overwhelmed by what we were just experiencing. Mm. So that took a couple days for me to get past, 2 or 3, I think, actually, before I could go back to work, because I couldn't focus. All of my attention was on the light and on the love and I needed time to reground back into my physical life.
You were the only living person that was involved in that.
Yeah, my soul family. There was one other person in my lifetime. There were only 3 of us that actually incarnated out of my soul family at the same time. So my entire soul family didn't incarnate at the same time. It's, at least this is my understanding. And so the gentleman from Iran, and who actually was my guardian, Gleason, he was another member of my soul family. And there was another person that I've met in this life that I believe we have a soul connection with, including my current wife, but not a part of my soul family. I believe that we have interacted in maybe past lives in the past, mm-hmm. and maybe our soul family plays with their soul family. I don't know. I don't understand that relationship, but there's a woman that I used to work with and my current wife that I believe we've had many connections in the past.
Was that Margaret?
No. Margaret was a mentor in this life who taught me how to go back into the light. We had an amazing experience. I I was having trouble as an experiencer, and Margaret was an experiencer who taught a lot of people how to have spiritual experiences similar to near deaths, but through mostly like a meditative type of state of close to a NDE type of experience. But anyway, Margaret taught me that it was okay to be an experiencer. It was okay. And so I was having a rough patch and went down to her house with some friends and my first wife. And Margaret and I had an opportunity one evening to sit on her couch and just have a conversation. And she asked me, "Have you ever returned back to the light?" And I said, "No way, Margaret. I'm afraid to, because that love is so overpowering. It just overpowers me. I become this puddle of tears." I said, I can't, I don't know how I could ever touch that, even touch the light. And she goes, "Well, would you go over with me and cross over with me and go into the light?" And and Margaret was one of these individuals. I've only met one other individual like Margaret, where the love resided within her. It was palpable in her presence. And the other person that I met that felt the same way was His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And so when Margaret asked me, "Would you go into the light with me?" I was like, "Yes, Margaret. Anything you want, Margaret," because I felt that love from her. And so we were talking, and as we were talking about the light, we came to the threshold and we crossed the threshold. But with her presence there, the love wasn't so overpowering for me, but I got to feel that unconditional love again. I got to feel the light and the enormity of it, the hyper reality of it. And so while we were conversing and transitioning on the couch there, a friend of ours had come in, and he sat down. He tried to have a conversation with us, but he said the next morning he tells us this tale about how I came into the room. You two were just sitting there staring at each other. I tried to talk to you, yet you never even acknowledged I was there. And I just got up and left. And meanwhile, we didn't even realize William had come into the room and everything, because we had transitioned into the light and didn't recognize that he was even present. But it wasn't his moment to be with us in the light, that sort of thing. But and so since then, she encouraged, well, afterwards, Margaret has since passed, but she had encouraged me to practice going into the light. It's kind of like you have to anesthetize yourself a little bit each time until you get comfortable being in that presence.
Was that before or after you had an experience on Bell Rock? You were told to go into the light.
Yeah, that was after that, actually. That was after that.
Okay.
I had a second near-death-like experience where I relived my entire NDE because, the light spoke to me and asked me and told me to return to the light, and I relived the entire experience, including the additional 11 years, that I had lived since my first experience, because this was 11 years later.
So it was like bringing your life review up to date.
It was like
Jeez.
it was like bringing it up to date. I never thought of that, but yeah. And I got to see in those 11 years how much I had changed because of the first experience. I really didn't think I'd changed that much, because I thought I had packed away the experience. I just kept the acceptance, tolerance, and truth. But those three things had changed me dramatically. And I got to see that in the second life review, where those 11 years, how much that had really affected me. So I didn't think I'd changed that much. And I thought I had a handle on this near-death thing, until I had the second experience. But that really taught me to, you have to, and I saw that I really wasn't living my truth. Remember how vital truth meant to me?
Yeah.
Because I had, kind of pushed away a lot of the NDE experience. So I wasn't being truthful with myself. And and if I'm not being truthful with myself, can I be truthful in all my interactions, So it taught me that I had to accept everything, and then I wanted to live by what I'd learned from that near-death experience. I really wanted to incorporate that everything into my life. I called it my quiet ministry because again, I had hidden for so many years, it was hard for me to just come out. But Margaret was one of the first people that taught me or asked me to share my experience in its, the whole experience, like I had shared with you a moment ago.
At Bell Rock, you had a vision of your soul family, and you wrote, "The sight of them initially captivated me, blinding me to the full amount of detail in that experience. Now at Bell Rock, I could not only see them clearer, I could see myself better. I recognized that I too was a light being, just like my soul family."
Yeah, it was the second experience that really, the first one, like I said, I was in gaga awe of the whole experience, that I didn't have the presence of awareness to examine where I was and what was happening to a greater detail. So in the second experience, I spent some time looking and examining and really, I don't know, I like to say squeezing the juice out of the experience.
One of the great things about your book, by the way, are the quotes that you've
Oh,
assembled. Here's one from Socrates. "You will know that the divine is so great and of such a nature that it sees and hears everything at once, is present everywhere, and is concerned with everything." I thought that was lovely. And
isn't it? Because it conveys what many experiencers say, that once you're on the other side, everything is present at the same in there is
so,
no
yes,
time. Yeah,
it's
I mean,
all one.
it's all one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that Socrates knew this. What
That
an
long
enlight
ago, I know it's
what an enlightened being.
yeah, yeah. I just came on a note from this place. Margaret helped me to go within myself and find the doorway into the light. Is that something that you feel like you can do at will now?
I do it because now, because of the third experience that when in the introduction you talked about how I had stage 4 lung and bone cancer.
Yes.
And so in my healing journey with the cancer, Margaret showed me where my threshold was. We all have a threshold within us that can carry us from our fragment of light that resides within us into our greater totality, okay,
Hmm.
into the light. And so that threshold is what's the secret. Where is the threshold within us? And Margaret showed me mine in that experience on the couch. She showed me where my threshold was. And so since then, she encouraged me to go into the light, and I would do it once in a while. But once I had the cancer diagnosis, I used my guidance with my soul family and my ability to transition into the light to be able to, not only using traditional medicine and holistic medicine, but also through visualization and surgeons into the light, I was able to overcome my cancer. And so now, once this healing technique that I kind of developed, I call it white light energy. I have an energy practice now that I do for folks. And what I do is I have a quick conversation to find out where they are in the present moment. And then I go into the light, connect with their light essence, and do the energy work with their light essence actually directing the work. So yes, I do on a regular basis. In fact, I just had a client yesterday morning that I went into the light and worked with them. So yeah, I do it pretty frequently. Yeah,
The cancer was happened in 2000. You were diagnosed
2000.
with it. Yeah.
Yep.
And you have spirit instructions in your book, and I won't read them all, but I'll give the first sentence of each one because it seems like this was to lowered blood pressure, allowed you to relax and breathe and to overcome pain. Give thanks for this life. Visualize your heart as a rosebud that is starting to bloom. Feel the warmth from the love and compassion growing through your heart. Take time to feel your body being bathed in this warm light of love and compassion. And now raise the light up through your crown to Father Sky and release the pain and suffering transmuted into love and compassion onto the winds of the universe.
Mm.
I mean, that if someone could put themselves into that frame of mind, it would, I think, alleviate a lot of pain, psychological and physical pain, both.
True. And the secret there is the gratitude. After taking a deep breath and allowing yourself to relax, when we're in a sincere state of gratitude, it quiets the egoistic part of us because when we're sincerely grateful, we're connected to our divine nature. Gratitude is almost a direct connection to that, and creativity are both direct avenues to connect with our divine nature. And so it's easier than you think to get into that state of mind where we can be in that healing mode for ourselves. And when I say healing mode, it translates into physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing. It heals on all those facets at the same time. But a lot of times the key is to know, we were talking about the thresholds within us, right? One easy way to try to find your threshold is to examine, where do you find inspiration? Because we all have something that inspires us, whether it's gardening, whether it's writing, art, music. We all have something that inspires us. And if we take the time when we receive those inspirations, you know, wow, I just understood something I didn't understand before, or I suddenly feel like I need to do this or do that. When we feel those inspiring moments, usually they're associated with a physical sensation within us. Like for me, I feel my heart like it's expanding. I have other friends that are healers as well, and they feel in the palms of their hands. Some people feel it in their crown, third eye. I mean, these are all great. It's sometimes just the gut. We've talked about gut reflex, right? Well, there's a huge ganglia of receptors down there in our gut that could be your doorway. So we all have inspiration. And when inspiration comes to us, it comes also with a physical sensation. That's kind of a key that you might focus on for your doorway, for your threshold. It might be that's where, because like my threshold is my heart. I feel my heart expand, and my threshold is right there.
Not to change the mood, but I laughed out loud. And no offense, please, but when your mother is dying and she says, I'm going to quit this racket,
Yep. Get this bird.
over and over again, I thought, and I just laughed. And my wife asked me what I was laughing at, and I told her, and she laughed too. I'm going to quit this racket. I think that's
Yep.
great.
Yep. That
Um,
was mom. That was mom.
and,
That's a
and then you had a couple of near-death communications with her afterwards, after-death communications, rather.
after death communications. Yeah. She, because it's kind of interesting, and a lot has come to with the world of DNA testing and stuff like that. I've learned a lot about my mother, and a lot about family that I didn't even know existed. Um, but it's interesting how that generation, they were really good at hiding stuff. Boy, oh my goodness. So so it's interesting. Mom was a unique character. God bless her. She chose a really hard life to live in this life. She was very, very negative. You hear of negative Nelly. Well, that was my mom, and she was very critical. The grass was always greener on the other side of the fence, and that type of thing, and which really presented a really hard life for her. And I didn't get to know her that well. In fact, I didn't. Yeah, she used to put me in with families, and I would, because she was a single mom when it wasn't popular to be a single mom. And so she would put me with these families. She thought she was doing the best thing for me. In her mind's eye, she was doing the best thing for me, but she didn't realize that sometimes she'd put me in a situation that was abusive, and then the next family was maybe neglective. And so from one family to the next, then she'd find out, oh, they're not taking the best care of him. So I'll put him in another family. And so kind of before social services, I guess. But anyway, she thought she was doing the best she could for me. But we weren't really reunited until she wanted to move from central New York down out to Arizona. And so that was, in my early teens. And that's when I was reunited with my mom. And boy, she knew how to push my buttons, but we became kind of distant for many, many years. But in the last 10 years of her life, after her husband died, I came back into her life. Spirit actually kind of asked me to come back into my mom's life. And so it was a tough, kind of rocky road, but we kind of forged a relationship again. And so when she decided to quit this burg, or, she was going to get rid of, it was time to go for her. She made the choice. She made the choice to die. She just stopped eating. She said, I've had enough. She was going through a number of periods of suffering, disease and things like that was causing a lot of suffering. And she just decided that she wanted to leave. And God bless her, she left. Within 10 days, she was gone.
After her death, what did your communications reveal?
Well, that I had a sister that I didn't know about. And then also that she had finally come to peace. Mom didn't live in a peaceful state. And so to see her in joy and in peace and connected with a sister who had transitioned before us, those were the type of after death communications that we had. And so it really meant a lot to me to see her in a better place, because her life was really not anything but peaceful, anything but.
And you saw her with her daughter.
Yeah. My sister, her daughter.
Your sister, yeah. How did you see that? I mean, physically or in your mind?
It was kind of in a dream. It was one of those waking dreams. And she brought her, because my mom had these ankles that were kind of like turned over. And so she always wore flats. She never wore high heels. And all of a sudden, mom presented her. She's walking in high heels, and and she's got her hand with this young girl. And I'm like, wow, mom, you look great. This is amazing. But who's the girl? And then she introduced me to,
Wow.
her daughter, my sister.
Wow.
Who had died in childbirth.
Now to come to something entirely physical, your experience of the birds at the sugar shack.
Oh gosh. Wow, you really dig deep. Leah, I love it. I love it. These are things I just never get to talk about. Yeah, I lived in central New York. We lived in Skaneateles in the wine country. And in the winter, the winters are quite brutal there. We would get several feet of snow, and we would be, housebound quite a bit. And by March, you would start to get cabin fever pretty bad, And so I would do anything to get outside. And so I would put the snowshoes on, and I would tap my maple trees, and I started sugaring while we were living there, And oh, it was so nice to get out of the house and to be out. And so I had built this little sugar shack, and I had my evaporator in there, and I would stoke, and I had a wood-fired type of homemade evaporator that I made out of a sugaring pan and stuff like that. And so I would sit out there in the early morning hours, because to evaporate down, it took many gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup, And you come from the New England, you're very well aware.
Oh, my dad lived in the Syracuse area. So
yeah.
I know it well.
So the snow comes, we measure it in feet, not in inches there.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I would go out to the sugar shack. You'd have to go early in the morning at like dawn. And at dawn in the early spring, when we'd start boiling the sap, the snow is, blanketing the earth is so much colder that it creates this ground fog that is, it's very thick. But in Syracuse, we're on the migratory route for a lot of geese and migratory birds and stuff. And so we lived out in the country, and across the street was a 280 acre farm that had some natural wetlands. And so the snow geese would come in. And if you've ever seen snow geese, when they fly, they don't honk like Canadian geese. So they're very silent when they're in the air. So I was sugaring this one morning, and the fog was nice and thick, but all of a sudden I would hear this bzz, bzz, bzz. And it was the wings of the snow geese, and they were flying just at treetop level. And when they came over, there was just enough clarity through the fog that I could see them come out of the fog, clearly see them, and then they'd go back and disappear back in the fog. It was a magical moment. It was an absolutely just magical moment where, these pure white geese with just a little black tip on their wings, and they would just appear out of the mist and then disappear again. And all you would have to know they're coming was this sound of like the wings beating in the air,
Now, I have to read the line from your book. I had just settled into my chair by the door when I distinctly heard Spirit say, expand your awareness into the oneness and witness the wonders of our interconnection to all.
Yeah.
And there had
Yeah.
also been, I think Cindy said something about white birds.
Yeah, she had a vision. Yeah, she had a vision of me when we were kind of getting together. And this was something that she foresaw. She's very psychic, my wife.
Yes.
And so she knew that this was an experience that I was going to have. And it was, Spirit alerted me prior to hearing them and seeing them, but it was such a magical moment in the presence. And Spirit has this way of telling me sometimes, okay, stop what you're doing, because we get so wrapped up in the little details the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And so Spirit would communicate to me to just stop and listen and be present, be aware, increase your awareness so that you can feel what's going on around you. Thich Nhat Hanh likes to talk about, breathing in and breathing out, and being present, breathing in peace and breathing out. In fact, I use his techniques when I do walking meditation. And when I do that, I have the same experience of feeling suddenly an expansive awareness. I know what's happening over the ridge next to me, And so, yeah, when Spirit wants to wake me up, usually it's kind of a message like, okay, you need to be aware right now. And sometimes they send messengers to kind of that synchronistic messengers to kind of also clue us in when we need to be present.
Well, the geese were flying figure eights, which is this infinity symbol.
Yeah, because I guess they were either trying to, when you've watched geese, I'm sure you live in New
Oh,
England,
yes.
so you see the geese. So when they first come in, they don't just come in and land. They come in, they kind of like circle around and until they find the exact spot that they want to get land in, and then they come in for their final approach. Well, that's what they were kind of doing. They were across the street. They were trying to get to those wetlands to have breakfast. Uh,
Wow. Well, Dave, this has been wonderful. I'm going to close with another quote from your book. This is Epictetus, I guess it
mhm.
is.
Yeah.
Remember that you ought to behave in life as you would at a banquet. As something is being passed around, it comes to you. Stretch out your hand, take a portion of it politely. It passes on, do not detain it. Or it has not come to you yet. Do not project your desire to meet it, but wait until it comes in front of you. It just seems like
Another
a fitting place to stop.
Yeah. Another Greek philosopher that is quite an enlightened being. Mm.
Yes. Dave, tell listeners how they can find your book and get in touch with you if you'd like.
Yes, the book is Voyage of Purpose. It's available. You can go on Amazon. It's still in print. These many years, it keeps getting reprinted. And God bless. God bless. And to reach me, you can go to my website. My website is very simple: Dharma Talks, Dharma TALKS, dharmatalks.com. And from there, if you want, you can connect to me on social media. You can schedule, an energy session. You can contact me directly if you just have something that you need to say.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. My thanks to David Bennett for sharing the details of his amazingly spiritual life story. If you've enjoyed this show, I strongly recommend you pick up a copy of his excellent book, Voyage of Purpose. And if you'd like to hear this show again or any of our more than 500 archived, ad-free NDE interviews, go to TalkZone's NDE Radio site and hit the Past Shows button, or go to our YouTube channel, NDE Radio with Lee Witting, where you can subscribe to and comment on the complete NDE Radio library. And be sure to check out our NDE Radio Facebook page. Just search NDE Radio with Lee Witting on your Facebook app, and listen next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern at TalkZone for more NDE Radio. I'm your host, Lee Witting, saying thanks for listening.